the question there from Lisa about how is this going to impact spending for the customer at home that wants to watch the games. I think in one respect, when you have the proven entity like Ohio State, their game is going to be on Fox at noon, at CBS at 3:30, or NBC at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I think they're going to play the games at 7:30 because in the fall, Saturday Night Live begins its season at 11:30, and they're not going to want to push that back because the Big Ten game went into quadruple overtime. They're going to want to start that show as always at 11:30. So they may even want to start their game at 7:15, to make sure that it's off the air and you have a little bit of a buffer for news before Saturday Night Live begins at 11:30. So I think, most of Ohio State's Big Ten games will be on one of those three over the air, Fox, NBC, or CBS stations. But there will be 4 or 5 games a year that will be on Big Ten Network, Fox Sports 1, possibly USA, and possibly CBS Sports Network, or the streaming, which are going to cost people money. That those channels and the streaming services you can cut the cord all you want, but you ain't watching them games if you ain't paying somebody for some kind of access to those games. So you can have an antenna, a digital antenna on top of your TV or on top of your roof to haul in the NBC, CBS, and Fox games, but the ones that are put on cable and put on streaming, you will not get those. You will not get those unless you're paying somebody for something.
And it's going to be worse because when BTN came in and everybody, I mean, especially within the footprint, it's like, well, go to a bar, go to Roosters to go see it, go to wherever, B-dubs. When it comes to streaming, bars don't necessarily have that one figured out, especially when you have multiple TVs and feeds and everything else. And sure, you may have Wi-Fi there to be able to run your credit card processing system or whatever, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to have to be a pretty quick buildup to see what these places are going to do in terms of being able to get Peacock or be able to get Apple or Amazon or whatever ends up being the situation there. But I agree with Steve that, the teams that are at the top of the conference are not going to get farmed out much, but there might be something in there. I mean, as it stands now, everybody in the Big Ten has to play on BTN twice, one out of conference game, one in conference game. So is there going to be something of where once a year you got to appear on the streaming channel? I mean, I don't know. I mean,
no doubt.
Go ahead.
I think there's too many games for it to be, you have to be on Peacock every year, but I could see every year you have to be on Apple or Peacock. Like one of those two things, you will be playing a Friday night game or you'll be playing on Peacock. And I don't know which is worse for any particular team, but when you've got NBC giving you $350 million, and who knows what Apple, if they end up doing this and it is a Friday night, as we're speculating, is that another $300 million? Because there's nothing else going on a Friday night in terms of like sports on television that you'll be going against. Maybe some regional NBA, I don't know. And that won't do any ratings, but the thing that you'll be going against is the fact that fewer people are watching TV, but there's no other games necessarily going on. ESPN may have something, but it's, Boise State against Nevada or something like that. So I think there's a premium there, not to mention that it's the Big Ten, but that's also tier 4 or 3. If NBC and CBS are splitting tier 2, Apple gets tier 4. Does Peacock or whatever does that get farmed down to them as tier 5, tier 6? You've got FS1, BTN. There's so many. There's going to be a lot of content and inventory. I'm wondering, and I tweeted this out a little bit ago, what happens next year when CBS has both the SEC and the Big Ten for a year? Because that 3:30 window, they're both going to want it. And we know sometimes CBS will put a game on at night, an SEC game on, and they'll have a doubleheader, or we'll just have one at night. But like something is going to have to give there in terms of does ESPN buy out that contract? And because ESPN now has some money to spend, so maybe they buy out the contract and they they float something to the Big 12 to get Texas and Oklahoma in soon, or something of that nature.
Wonder if some of those go to CBS Sports Network for 1 year just to get it going, and then back over to CBS the following year, which would help.
Rights deal end though? When does the current rights deal end? I thought that it went through 23, and then so I didn't think any of this stuff started till 24.
I think the Big Ten starts next year.
Mm-hmm.
Does it start? Well, okay then,
because it's 6 years, and it started with 2017, so this will be the 6th year.
Yeah, and then the Mountain West has a rights deal with CBS Sports Net,
right.
I believe, as well, and so does the Navy, maybe.
Yeah.
So like, there's windows there that won't be available either. So there's just, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they work this all out, or maybe they just try to avoid it altogether and rework a contract in there.
I think you'll see some buyouts and some movement to try and make things fit so everybody can kind of get on. No reason to sit around with an estranged partner at that point. Just, let's all get on with our lives.
Especially with all of the pregame shows that you're doing, where you're going to want to focus more on the conferences you're attached to, instead of like, the ones that you aren't, because we know there's going to be bias. Like the Fox loves the Big Ten, ESPN loves the SEC. CBS would be split between two masters, kind of, with their pregame stuff and how they promote it next year. So, I think it would be best for all to get away from each other, but that maybe CBS isn't ready to give up on. Isn't ready to say goodbye to the SEC ratings.
CBS split between two masters. Pardon the pun, there, Tony.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to let everyone know who's curious out there, the voice of college football, waiting for the next rights agreement to come due before we get into that bidding war.